You're just a burden." My dad's words hit like a knife when he and my mom threw me out of the house on my 22nd birthday, tossing me onto the street with 2 suitcases and not an ounce of mercy. I'm Emily, a 22-year-old from Austin, Texas, and this isn't just some Reddit drama for y'all to scroll through. This is the real-life nightmare I lived. The gut-wrenching betrayal by my own parents, Robert and Charlotte, after years of them controlling me with their money. My birthday was supposed to be a happy day, a chance for some reconciliation after months of tension, but instead, it turned into the worst day of my life. I walked into the living room of our fancy Westlake Hills home in Austin, clinging to a sliver of hope that my parents might celebrate me, might say they're proud of me, a graphic design student about to graduate college. But no, they sat there, cold as strangers, with a stack of financial papers on the table, like I was an employee about to get fired. "You've burned through too much of our money," my dad said, his voice icy. "With that useless graphic design major, we're done supporting you." My mom, Charlotte, chimed in, her eyes like frost. "You need to leave. Tonight." I stood there, stunned, tears streaming down my face, unable to believe my own parents could be so cruel, kicking me out on my birthday, leaving me homeless with just 2 suitcases full of random stuff and a broken heart. It felt like the whole world came crashing down, like I'd been thrown into a Texas prairie storm with nowhere to hide. But what they don't know is that their useless daughter picked up a few tricks, and I'm about to make their credit accounts crash and burn. I'll never forget that moment when the door slammed shut behind me, the lock clicking like the final nail in the coffin of my relationship with my parents. How am I supposed to survive with just $237.48 in my bank account and my whole life in Austin suddenly turning into a fight for survival? How am I supposed to survive with just $237.48 in my bank account and my entire life in Austin suddenly turning into a fight for survival? That question haunted me after the night my parents kicked me out on my 22nd birthday, called me a burden, and tossed me onto the street with 2 suitcases. I'm Emily, and to understand why my parents' cruel actions, Robert and Charlotte, cut me so deep, I have to go back to the years I spent growing up in their fancy but ice-cold Westlake Hills home in Austin, Texas. A place where I had everything money could buy, but was trapped by the invisible financial strings my parents used to control me. Those years didn't just shape my pain. They lit the fire that's now driving me to get even. From the time I was a kid, I lived in a house that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. High-end furniture, perfect Christmas cards, and designer clothes my mom, Charlotte, forced me to wear to keep up our ideal family image. But inside, that house was as cold as a bank vault. My dad, Robert, a financial advisor with his own firm in Austin, used money to keep me in line. "As long as I'm paying, you follow my rules," he'd say whenever I wanted to do something for myself, like join the photography club at school or pursue the graphic design major I'm passionate about. My mom was relentless with her criticism. An A- was a failure compared to the straight A's she demanded. The art projects I poured my heart into were messy to her, and my friends were dismissed as going nowhere. She was a prom queen and valedictorian in high school, and she never let me forget it, always holding me to her impossible standards. They'd argue behind closed doors, but in public, they played the perfect couple, a performance I was forced to be part of. When I got into college in Austin with a partial scholarship, my dad took all the credit. "We sacrificed so you could succeed," he said. But the scholarship wasn't enough, and they used money to control me again, forcing me to open a joint bank account so they could track my spending, which really meant monitoring every penny I spent. I grew up in that suffocating control, never free, and my 22nd birthday was just the breaking point of years of being crushed under their weight. How am I supposed to move forward when my parents called me into the living room for a financial review and turned my special day into a nightmare? My parents called me into the living room for a financial review, turning my 22nd birthday into a nightmare after years of growing up under their suffocating control. After I realized that money was the invisible chain Robert and Charlotte used to bind me in Austin, Texas. I'm Emily, and I'd hoped this birthday might bring some reconciliation. That my parents would finally see me as an adult, ready to graduate college with my passion for graphic design. But I never imagined that this special day, a day I thought would be filled with joy, would become the day they cruelly kicked me out, treating me like a defective product to be discarded, shattering my heart like it was trampled in a Texas prairie storm. I walked into our Westlake Hills home in Austin after a long day at college, clinging to a faint hope that my parents might celebrate my birthday. I'd bought a small chocolate cupcake with a single candle from the campus bakery, telling myself I could at least celebrate on my own. But when I opened the door, there were no smiles, no birthday wishes, just a chilling atmosphere and my parents' icy stares. They were sitting in the living room, like they were prepped for a business meeting, with a stack of financial documents on the coffee table. "Sit down, Emily," my dad, Robert, said, his voice stern, pointing to the chair across from them, like I was an employee about to be fired. I sat, my heart pounding, a wave of dread washing over me. "We've reviewed the family finances," he began, flipping open the folder. "And your spending has become unsustainable." "My spending?" I echoed, my voice trembling, unable to believe it. I'd always been careful with every penny, even skipping meals to save. But my mom, Charlotte, cut in, her tone like frost. "It's not just the money, Emily. It's your failed choices. That graphic design major will never pay the bills." I tried to defend myself. "I'm graduating in just 3 months." But my dad interrupted, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're a burden, Emily. We're done supporting you. You need to leave tonight." I stood there, stunned, tears streaming down my face, unable to fathom how they could be so heartless. Kicking me out on my birthday, as if I was worth nothing to them. I stood there, my heart in pieces, knowing my life in Austin had been turned upside down in just minutes. How am I supposed to keep going when I have to call my best friend Sophie to beg for a place to crash, with my few belongings and a pain that won't let go? I had to call my best friend Sophie to beg for a place to crash, with my meager belongings and a pain that wouldn't fade, after the night my parents kicked me out on my 22nd birthday, called me a burden, and turned my special day into a nightmare in Austin, Texas. I'm Emily, and I'll never forget the heartbreak when the door of our West Lake Hills home slammed shut behind me. The lock clicking like the final nail in the coffin of my relationship with my parents. I stood on the porch, tears mixing with the rain, my 2 suitcases beside me like all that was left of my life, as the pain and betrayal swallowed me like a tidal wave in a Texas prairie. I knew I had to find a way to survive, with just $237,048 in my bank account, but I didn't realize my parents could be even crueler, cutting off every shred of financial support to push me to the edge. I called Sophie right away, my voice breaking through sobs. "They kicked me out tonight. Can I stay with you for a night?" Sophie didn't hesitate. "Of course, Emily, I'll come get you." But I couldn't wait. "No, they only gave me 30 minutes. I'll drive myself." I threw my suitcases into the car, rain soaking my hair, and drove to Sophie's tiny apartment in East Austin, my heart still pounding from shock and pain. When I got there, Sophie and her roommate Mia opened the door. No judgment, just the warmth I'd never felt from my parents. I collapsed onto their worn-out couch, my suitcases still by my side, unable to sip the hot tea Mia brought because my throat was choked with grief. "They really didn't give you any time?" Mia asked, her voice full of disbelief. I shook my head, tears falling again. "No, they just said I'm a burden and I had to go." Sophie sat beside me, wrapping her arms around me. "You're not alone. You can stay here as long as you need." But we all knew their cramped apartment couldn't fit another person forever. The next morning, I checked my bank account on my phone only to find my parents had cut off all financial support. The joint account they controlled was empty, leaving me with just $237.48 in my personal account. I sat there in Sophie's apartment, feeling like the world had crumbled, with no idea how to survive on so little. I knew this was just the start of a fight for survival, but how am I supposed to keep going when my parents have cruelly pushed me to the brink, forcing me to face the painful truth about their love for me? I had to face a brutal truth about my parents' so-called love after they ruthlessly backed me into a corner. That night, I called my best friend Sophie, begging to crash at her place with just a duffel bag of clothes, $237.48 in my bank account, and my entire life in Austin, Texas, reduced to a fight for survival. I'm Emily, and it kills me to realize that my parents, Robert and Charlotte, didn't just kick me out on my 22nd birthday. They cut off every penny of financial support like I was worth nothing to them. But I need to understand why they did this. Why they've controlled me with money all these years. Why they're so cruel, and why they've never truly loved me as their daughter. To find answers, I have to dig into their psyche, and what I've uncovered only fuels my resolve to claw my way back to freedom. From a psychological lens, my parents' behavior screams power control theory, a framework that explains how people like Robert and Charlotte wield money as a weapon to dominate others' lives, just like they've done to me for 22 years in Austin. To them, money isn't just a financial tool, it's an invisible leash, tethering me to their will, making me feel like I'm never good enough, never deserving of independence. My dad always said, "As long as I'm footing the bill, you follow my rules." Every time I wanted to chase my passions, like studying graphic design or joining the photography club at school. My mom, meanwhile, never stopped criticizing me, measuring me against impossible standards, like how she was prom queen and valedictorian back in high school. They don't have real empathy, they just wanted me as a trophy to flaunt in front of their friends in Westlake Hills, a perfect daughter for their social image, not a human being with feelings or dreams of her own. Their financial control was a power play, a way to keep me small, dependent, and too scared to ever leave. But when I refused to switch my major to business like they demanded, they cut me off, called me a burden. Like I was some defective product they could toss out without a second thought. Facing this truth hurts like hell, but it's also lit a fire in me, like the first rays of sun breaking through a Texas prairie storm. How am I supposed to survive, teetering on the edge of homelessness, scraping by to finish college with just 3 months left until graduation? How am I supposed to survive, practically homeless and scrambling to stay in school just 3 months from graduation, after realizing my parents never truly loved me? After understanding they used money to control me for 22 years in Austin, Texas, like an invisible chain to keep me bound. After that night, they kicked me out on my birthday? I'm Emily, and I'm caught in a brutal fight for survival, with nowhere to turn, just $237.48 in my bank account, and the pain of betrayal swallowing me like a Texas prairie storm. I'm crashing at Sophie's tiny apartment in East Austin, sleeping on her worn-out couch, but I know I can't stay there forever. Every morning, I wake up feeling like the world's against me. No money for food, no stable place to live, and only 3 months until I graduate college. I decide to visit the financial aid office at my school in Austin, hoping they can help me through this crisis. I line up at 8:30 a.m., clutching my student ID like a lifeline, my heart pounding with anxiety. When it's my turn, I spill everything. How my parents kicked me out, cut off all financial support, and left me with just $237.48. But Ms. Sullivan, a counselor, shakes her head, her voice flat. I'm sorry, but on your FAFSA, you're still listed as dependent on your parents. You'd need tax documents or a legal emancipation order for independent financial aid. I'm stunned, tears welling up. But they threw me out. I'm homeless. She just hands me a stack of emergency loan applications and a scholarship list, offering no immediate help. I leave the office, feeling abandoned again, like the system doesn't care. Just like my parents. Back at Sophie's apartment, I slump on the couch, staring at the $237.48 salads on my banking app, wondering how I'm supposed to survive on so little when rent, textbooks, and even food are crushing burdens. I know I have to find a way to make it, but how can I keep going when my parents are still trying to control me by freezing my personal account, forcing me to start small acts of rebellion to reclaim my freedom? My parents kept trying to control me by freezing my personal bank account, pushing me to the edge, forcing me to start small acts of rebellion to reclaim my freedom, after days of struggling to survive on just $237.48. After the system denied me financial aid because I'm still considered dependent on them, even though I'm practically homeless in Austin, Texas. I'm crashing at Sophie's tiny apartment, sleeping on her worn-out couch, feeling like the whole world's against me. No money for food, no stable place to live, and only 3 months until I graduate college. I know I have to act, even in small ways, to prove I'm not the burden my parents called me, to take back some control over my life, even if it means confronting the invisible chains they used to bind me. I start picking up shifts at a coffee shop near campus on South Congress in Austin, begging the manager for more hours, but he can only give me 10 hours a week. At minimum wage, that's barely enough for textbooks, let alone rent or food. I work myself to exhaustion, manning the counter for hours, scraping together every penny. But every time I check my account, despair hits. $237.48. Won't keep me afloat much longer. Then one night, when I check my banking app, I find my account's been frozen. A notice says there's a dispute, and I know instantly my parents did this. A final blow to control me, even after kicking me out. I sit in Sophie's apartment, tears streaming down my face, feeling suffocated, like I'm drowning in a Texas prairie storm with no way out. But I decide they won't win. I start small rebellions to take back my freedom. I turn off my phone for hours, ignoring my parents' texts demanding I return family property, like the laptop I've used since high school. I stay out late, breaking the reasonable curfew they used to enforce, and quietly apply for a graphic design internship at a company in Austin, despite their sneers that artists just starve. Each small act is terrifying yet thrilling, like the first rays of light after a storm, reminding me I'm still alive, still fighting. But how can I keep going when Sophie notices I'm burning out and a classmate pitches a revenge plan I can't resist? Sophie notices I'm burning out, worried I've lost my smile, and a classmate pitches a revenge plan I can't resist. After days of starting small rebellions to reclaim my freedom, after my parents froze my personal bank account, pushing me to the edge in Austin, Texas, with just $237.48 to survive. I'm picking up shifts at a coffee shop on South Congress, scraping together every penny. But each day, I feel like I'm sinking deeper into a Texas prairie storm with no way out. Sophie, who's been letting me crash at her place, sits beside me on her worn-out couch one late night, her eyes full of concern as she looks at me. You look like you're about to collapse. You don't smile anymore. You know that? I bow my head, tears welling up. I don't know how to survive, Sophie. I've only got $237.48, and I can't drop out when I'm 3 months from graduating. She puts a hand on my shoulder, her voice soft but firm. You can't keep going like this. You need to take back control, but not by running yourself into the ground. Her words hit me hard, making me realize I'm destroying myself, but I don't know what else to do. Until I meet Liam, a classmate in my advanced design course at the university in Austin. Liam, who's openly gay and was financially controlled by his parents when he came out, sits next to me in the campus computer lab one afternoon while I'm checking my frozen bank account. Bank trouble? He asks, his voice curious. I nod, unable to hide my desperation. My parents froze my personal account. They kicked me out last week, and now they're making sure I can't survive. Liam sighs, his eyes full of empathy. My dad did the same when I came out. He used money to control me when he couldn't control my feelings anymore. I look at him intrigued. How'd you get through it? Liam smirks, but there's a mischievous glint in his eye. Not always legally, but I learned a few tricks about financial security weaknesses. He explains that many people, especially older generations, often don't change passwords or security questions, leaving backdoors that someone with past access can exploit. I froze my dad's account once. Totally legal, just maximally annoying, he says, his eyes sparkling. The idea makes my heart race like the first ray of light after a storm, and I can't resist the revenge plan forming in my head. How could I have guessed that this plan would lead me to a coffee shop in Austin where Liam and I start scheming to freeze my parents' accounts? The revenge plan leads me to a coffee shop in Austin where Liam and I start scheming to freeze my parents' accounts. After Sophie worries I'm burning out. After Liam suggests a legal way to stir up financial chaos I can't resist. After days of struggling to survive in Austin, Texas, with just $237.48 in my account. I can't stand my parents' cruel control anymore. They kicked me out on my 22nd birthday, called me a burden, and froze my personal account to push me to the brink. I know I can't let them keep hurting me, and this plan, risky as it is the only way to make them feel the consequences, like a spark igniting in a Texas prairie storm, fueling my resolve. Liam and I meet at a small coffee shop in North Loop, Austin, one late afternoon, armed with his laptop and my fury. Before we start, he says, his voice cautious, I'm not helping you steal money or break the law. I'm just showing you how to use the legal access you already have. I nod, my eyes steely. I don't want their money. I just want them to feel the pain I'm going through. Liam explains that I helped my parents set up their online banking years ago, and they, always clueless with tech, probably never changed their passwords or security questions. If you still have access, you can legally freeze their accounts, he says, by reporting their credit cards as potentially compromised or tweaking their security info just enough to cause a hassle without crossing into illegal territory. He walks me through how to request security verifications, set fraud alerts on their credit reports, and change security questions by a single character, like switching Robert 1965 to Robert 1966, enough to create major headaches when they try to regain access. I know the perfect time to strike. The 30th, right before their automatic payments, like their car lease and country club membership, process on the 3rd and 4th. I want them to feel the collapse I did, to see their precious Austin reputation take a hit, just like they wrecked my life. Every step of the planning makes my heart race, a mix of thrill and nerves, like I'm walking a tightrope between justice and danger. How could I have guessed this plan would send my parents into a panic, with their credit cards declined at restaurants and business meetings, letting me finally taste the power of revenge? The plan throws my parents into chaos when their credit cards get declined at a restaurant and a business meeting, and I start to feel the rush of revenge. It all started when Liam and I hatched the scheme at a coffee shop in Austin, deciding to freeze their accounts using the legal access I still had, after those days when my parents kicked me out of their house in Austin, Texas, and pushed me to the edge. I execute the plan on the night of the 30th, sitting in the university's computer lab, my heart pounding like a drum as I log into their main credit account, using the password I knew they'd never change, Robert 1965. The account opens instantly, like a door to the justice I've been craving, and I get to work, reporting their cards as potentially compromised, tweaking one character in the security question, just enough to cause havoc without crossing into felony territory. I slap a security freeze on their credit report, ensuring every transaction will stall until they verify their identity. And I know this will tank their auto payments, like their car lease and country club membership, on the 3rd and 4th. I set up an anonymous email to track the fallout, then sit back, a mix of thrill and dread washing over me, like I'm standing in the middle of a Texas prairie storm, unsure if I'll survive or get swept away. The results hit faster than I expected. By the next morning, I get a forwarded text from a cousin in Austin, saying my mom posted in the family group chat about weird issues with their credit cards, and my dad's convinced it's identity theft. By afternoon, the gossip spreads. My mom's card got declined at a fancy restaurant in Westlake Hills while she was treating her garden club friends, forcing her to ask a friend to cover the bill. A social humiliation I know she'll never live down. My dad fares no better. His corporate card gets rejected during a lunch with prospective clients, making him lean on a junior employee to pay, chipping away at the perfect financial advisor reputation he's built in Austin. I track it all through the anonymous email, feeling the power of revenge surge inside me, like a wildfire roaring after a storm. But I also start to feel a strange emptiness, like I'm turning into the kind of person I used to despise. How could I have guessed that this revenge, as satisfying as it is, would haunt me, forcing me to face a painful truth about myself? Revenge, though satisfying, starts to haunt me, forcing me to face a painful truth about myself. After my plan to freeze my parents' accounts sends them into a panic, after their credit cards get declined at restaurants and business meetings, tarnishing their reputation in Austin, Texas, after that night on the 30th when I execute the plan, causing their automatic payments to fail. I track everything through anonymous emails, feeling the power of revenge surge like a wildfire after a Texas prairie storm. But I also start to feel a strange emptiness, like I'm becoming the kind of person I used to hate. I need to understand why this revenge, though it feels like justice, doesn't bring the peace I crave. Why it leaves me obsessed, checking emails hourly to see how much my parents are struggling. To find answers, I have to dig deep into my own psyche, and what I uncover forces me to confront a painful truth. I'm destroying myself with the very fire I ignited. Psychologically, my drive for revenge stems from revenge motivation theory, which explains that when you're deeply hurt, like when my parents kicked me out on my 22nd birthday, called me a burden, and left me on the brink with just $237,000, you crave justice, wanting them to feel the pain they inflicted. This revenge gives me a sense of control, a feeling that I'm no longer a helpless victim, but someone who can make my parents pay. Like when I hear my mom's card gets declined at a restaurant in Westlake Hills, or my dad has to ask a junior employee to cover a bill at a business meeting in Austin. But the theory also warns that revenge can take a mental toll on the avenger, and I'm starting to feel it. I'm obsessed, unable to stop checking emails to see how much they're freaking out, unable to focus on school or my shifts at the coffee shop on South Congress, like I'm turning into the kind of person I despised. Someone who lives to control others just like my parents did to me for 22 years. Revenge doesn't bring freedom. It just ties me tighter to the pain, trapping me in a storm I can't escape. I realize that if I keep going, I'll destroy myself, and I have to find a way to stop no matter how hard it is. How could I have guessed that Sophie and my professor would notice my obsession, forcing me to face the true cost of this revenge? Sophie and my professor see that I'm spiraling, forcing me to confront the real cost of my revenge. After I realize that it hasn't set me free, but only chained me tighter to my pain, following the plan to freeze my parents' accounts that sent them into a panic in Austin, Texas. I can't stop checking my anonymous email every hour, tracking every step of their downfall, like when my mom's credit card got declined at a restaurant in Westlake Hills, or when my dad had to lean on an employee to cover a business lunch. But the initial rush of satisfaction quickly fades into a cold void, like the eerie calm after a Texas prairie storm, leaving me emptier than ever. Sophie, who's been letting me crash at her place, notices the change one evening in her tiny apartment in East Austin. "You're not yourself anymore," she says, her voice thick with worry. "You're obsessed with checking that email. You're destroying yourself." I bow my head, unable to argue, because I know she's right. I've been neglecting my studies, zoning out during my shifts at the coffee shop on South Congress, and even losing the spark to design, the passion that used to drive me. Then my professor, Dr. Carter, picks up on it during a portfolio review at the university in Austin. "Your recent designs lack soul," she says, her eyes full of concern. "You used to have this fiery spark in your work, but now it feels mechanical. What's holding you back?" Her words cut like a knife, forcing me to face the truth that revenge isn't just hurting my parents. It's ruining me, stripping away who I am, just like they did when they controlled me for 22 years. Guilt creeps in when I hear that my parents are starting to fight over the financial stress, with my mom threatening to stay with her sister until my dad fixes everything. I thought revenge would make me feel powerful, but now I just feel trapped, like I'm building my own prison, no different from the invisible chains my parents used to control me. I realize that if I keep going, I'll never escape this pain, never truly be free, and I have to find a way to stop, even if it means facing myself. How could I have known that choosing to let go of revenge would lead me to a journey of healing? As I start therapy through the university and begin focusing on rebuilding my life? Letting go of revenge sets me on a path to healing as I start therapy at school and focus on building a new life. After Sophie and my professor notice my obsession, after I face the true cost of revenge, realizing it doesn't bring freedom, but ties me to pain in Austin, Texas. I can't keep living with this obsession. Constantly checking anonymous emails to see how my parents are panicking after their credit cards got declined. Can't let pain control me the way my parents did for 22 years. I know that to be truly free, I have to let go. Not for my parents, but for myself, to heal my heart. Like the first rays of sunshine after a Texas prairie storm, bringing hope for a fresh start. I start therapy at the university's counseling center in Austin, meeting a therapist with warm eyes who listens to my story without judgment. "Revenge keeps you tethered to your parents," she says, her voice gentle. "It doesn't set you free. It just keeps you living in pain." Her words hit like a bolt of clarity, showing me I can't move forward if I cling to anger, that I have to let go to rediscover myself. I decide to stop the revenge plan, sending an anonymous email with instructions to unfreeze my parents' accounts without letting them know I was behind it. I don't want them back in my life. I just want to cut the final cord binding me to them. I send the email late one night, and as I hit send, it feels like a weight lifts off my shoulders, like I'm stepping out of a storm I created. I start focusing on my new life, pouring myself into my designs, picking up extra shifts at the coffee shop on South Congress to save every penny, and applying for an internship at a small design firm in Austin. I stop checking anonymous emails, stop obsessing over my parents' downfall, and for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. Like I'm finding myself again after being lost. I know this healing journey won't be easy, but I'm ready to face it, because I don't want to live in the shadow of revenge forever. How could I have guessed this path would lead me to a new life? When I get accepted into an emergency housing program and find my chosen family? My healing journey leads me to a new life, as I'm accepted into an emergency housing program and find my chosen family. After starting therapy at the university in Austin, Texas, after choosing to let go of revenge, sending an anonymous email with instructions to unlock my parents' accounts to sever the ties that bound me to them, I'm no longer consumed by vengeance, no longer checking my anonymous email to see their panic. And for the first time in months, I feel truly free, like warm sunlight after a Texas prairie storm, giving me a chance to rebuild my life. I'm accepted into the university's emergency housing program, moving into a small studio apartment in Austin's student housing. Barely bigger than a dorm room, but it's mine. A place I can call home for the first time since my parents kicked me out on my 22nd birthday. I unpack my suitcase, arranging clothes and personal items, feeling the weight of my homeless days finally lift. I also land a job at the university's design studio, creating promotional materials for campus events, earning income while building my design portfolio. This work not only covers groceries and basic expenses, but reignites my passion for graphic design, lost during my revenge-obsessed days. Plus, I secure a prestigious internship at a small design firm on South Congress, Austin, where I learn from professional designers and pave my career path. I start spending time with Sophie and Liam, who stood by me through my darkest days, and they become my chosen family, loving me for who I am, not what I can offer. We share dinners at Sophie's East Austin apartment, laughing and dreaming together, like the family I longed for growing up in the cold Westlake Hills house. I feel free, unbound by my parents' control or the pain of revenge, and for the first time, I believe I can build a life I'm proud of. How could I have known this healing journey would deepen my understanding of my psyche as I learned to release my parents' emotional grip to achieve true freedom? My healing journey leads me to a deeper understanding of my own psyche, as I learn to let go of my parents' emotional control to find true freedom. After building a new life in Austin, Texas, getting accepted into an emergency housing program, working in the university's design studio, and finding a chosen family in Sophie and Liam, I'm no longer obsessed with revenge, no longer chained to the pain my parents caused when they kicked me out on my 22nd birthday, and I feel free like the blazing sunlight after a Texas prairie storm, giving me a chance to live as my true self. But I need to understand why letting go matters so much, why fully cutting off my parents' emotional grip is essential for healing, and why it's the key to moving forward. From a psychological perspective, my journey reflects emotional detachment theory, a framework that explains how, to achieve true freedom, I must release my emotional dependence on those who hurt me, like my parents, who controlled me with money for 22 years, called me a burden, and never loved me for who I am. Letting go doesn't mean forgiving them. It means forgiving myself, allowing me to stop blaming myself for failing to meet their impossible expectations. Like when my mom constantly compared me to her idea of a prom queen, or when my dad pushed me to abandon my passion for graphic design to study business. Therapy at the university's counseling center in Austin helps me see that my emotional dependence on my parents kept me trapped in pain, feeling unworthy, but when I let go, when I sent an anonymous email with instructions to unlock their accounts and stop tracking their panic, I felt liberated, like I was stepping out of a prison I'd built myself. I no longer need their approval to feel worthy, no longer need revenge to feel strong, and I start living for myself, focusing on my work in the design studio, interning at a company on South Congress, and building real connections with Sophie and Liam. Letting go is the first step toward healing, toward finding true freedom, and I know this journey will lead to an even greater transformation as I learn to redefine what family means to me. How could I have known that building a chosen family would help me rediscover my self-worth, no longer needing validation from those who once hurt me? Building a chosen family helps me reclaim my self-worth, and I no longer need validation from those who hurt me. After learning to let go of my parents' emotional control, after my healing journey at the university's counseling center in Austin, Texas, deepens my understanding of my psyche, granting me true freedom. I'm no longer living to meet my parents' expectations. Those who kicked me out on my 22nd birthday, called me a burden, and controlled me with money for 22 years. But to be myself, seeking genuine connections, like warm sunlight after a Texas prairie storm, giving me a sense of belonging I never had. I build my chosen family with Sophie and Liam, people who stood by me through my darkest days when I was nearly homeless, surviving on just $237 in Austin. Sophie, who let me crash at her tiny East Austin apartment, becomes my sister, always ready to listen when I need to talk. Liam, my classmate who helped me plan revenge but also reminded me of the value of authenticity, becomes a brother I can trust. We share simple dinners, laughing and dreaming together, like evenings at a small diner on South Congress, where I feel a warmth I never knew in the cold Westlake Hills house. I learned to set boundaries with my toxic parents. When they text demanding family harmony after their finances stabilize, I refuse, replying briefly that I need my space, and I no longer let them hurt me. I realize my self-worth doesn't depend on their approval, but comes from genuine relationships, from people who love me for me, not for what I can do for them. I don't need my parents' validation to feel worthy. I find it in late nights at the school's design studio, in my internship at a small design firm, and in the friends who've become my family. Redefining family heals the wounds my parents left, letting me live a life I'm proud of. And I know this journey will lead to a major milestone. How could I have guessed that a year later, I'd graduate with honors and find true happiness, celebrating my 23rd birthday with my chosen family? A year later, I graduate with honors and find true happiness, celebrating my 23rd birthday with my chosen family. After redefining family through genuine bonds with Sophie and Liam, setting boundaries with my toxic parents in Austin, Texas, and reclaiming my self-worth without needing their validation. I no longer live to meet the expectations of those who kicked me out, called me a burden, but live to be myself, building a life I'm proud of, like the blazing sunlight after a Texas prairie storm, giving me a hopeful new start. A year after that horrific birthday, when my parents threw me out in June 2024, I walk across the stage at the university's graduation in Austin in spring 2025, clutching my honors degree in graphic design, my heart pounding with pride as I hear applause from Sophie, Liam, and the new friends I found on my healing journey. My parents aren't there, but their absence doesn't sting anymore. I've learned I don't need their approval to feel worthy. After graduation, I land a job at the small design firm on South Congress where I interned, and I start living independently, sharing a cozy apartment with Sophie and another friend in East Austin. It's not as fancy as the house in Westlake Hills where I grew up, but it's filled with laughter and warmth, things I never had with my parents. I manage my own finances, open a checking account, build an emergency fund, and learn to never fall back into the dependency I felt when my parents controlled me with money for 22 years. My 23rd birthday in June 2025 is a special day. No more tears or pain, but a small party thrown by Sophie at our apartment, with chocolate cake and friends who've become my family. I blow out the candles, smiling amid laughter and well wishes, feeling true happiness for the first time in years, like I've found light after my darkest days. I'm no longer the girl my parents called a burden. I've become a strong woman, living true to my passion and values. But how could I have guessed that my parents would try to reach out again, realizing I've succeeded, forcing me to face a tough decision about our relationship? My parents try to reach out again, realizing I've succeeded, forcing me to face a tough decision about our relationship after I graduate with honors and celebrate my 23rd birthday with my chosen family in Austin, Texas, after finding true happiness, living independently with a job at a small design firm on South Congress. I no longer live to meet the expectations of those who kicked me out on my 22nd birthday, called me a burden, but I never expected them to come back. Not out of love, but because they see I've made it without them. Like blazing sunlight after a Texas prairie storm, shining on a truth they can't ignore. A few months after my spring 2025 graduation, I start getting texts from my parents. Short ones at first, like they're testing the waters, asking if I'm doing okay, or want to come home for dinner. But I know it's not a real apology. They don't mention kicking me out, don't acknowledge the pain they caused when they cut off all financial support, leaving me with just $237.48 to survive in Austin. I reply curtly, "I'm fine, I'm busy," and don't let them pull me back into the control spiral I escaped. Then rumors start reaching me through acquaintances in Westlake Hills. My parents have heard about my success, my honors graduation, my job at a reputable design firm, and a life they didn't expect. They're starting to regret, not because they hurt me, but because they see I didn't need them to succeed, that I proved them wrong when they said artists just starve. A relative says my mom admitted at a party in Austin. Maybe we were too hard on her. She's doing better than we thought. But I don't feel satisfied hearing that. I just feel sad, knowing they haven't really changed. They just want me back to show off to their friends, like they once used me as a prop to keep up their perfect family image. I face a tough choice. Should I give them a chance, or keep my boundaries to protect the happiness I've built with Sophie and Liam? I choose the latter, refusing to return to that toxic relationship because I know my happiness no longer depends on them. How could I have guessed this journey would teach me such profound lessons as I share my story with others who've been financially controlled by their families? My journey brings hard-earned lessons as I share my story with others who've been financially controlled by family. After refusing to return to a toxic relationship with my parents, who reached out when they saw my success in Austin, Texas, after I graduated with honors and found true happiness with my chosen family. I no longer live to meet the expectations of those who kicked me out, called me a burden, but live to be myself, and I want this story to hit home for y'all in Texas, Reddit drama fans, and anyone grappling with financial control or family rejection. My journey, from that horrific birthday when my parents threw me out in June 2024, with just 237 48 salads to survive, to the day I graduated with honors and started working at a small design firm on South Congress, proves you're never alone. I was financially controlled by my parents, tied down by their money for 22 years, consumed by revenge when I froze their accounts. But I learned to let go, to heal through therapy at the university's counseling center in Austin, and to find true freedom by building a chosen family with Sophie and Liam. I set boundaries with my toxic parents, refused to return to an unhealthy relationship, and found my worth through genuine connections, through the design work I love, and through a life I'm proud of. The biggest lesson I want to share with y'all, whether you're in Texas or anywhere else, is that true freedom comes from letting go of toxic ties and forging your own path. You don't need validation from those who hurt you to feel worthy. You can find light after the storm, like I did. Like the blazing sunlight after a Texas prairie storm, bringing hope for a fresh start. I want to hear your stories. Have you ever been financially controlled by family? What did you do to break free? To reclaim your freedom, like I did by walking away from my parents? Share your story in the comments, because every story matters. Every story can inspire, just like I pushed through my darkest days to find light. How can we spread this lesson, with small but meaningful actions, to help each other find freedom and happiness? We're spreading this lesson with small but meaningful actions to help each other find freedom and happiness after I shared my story with those who've been financially controlled by family. After asking y'all in Texas about your experiences with control and how you broke free. After I found light after my darkest days in Austin, Texas. I want this Reddit drama story to be more than just my journey of overcoming my parents' financial control, kicking me out on my 22nd birthday, leaving me with just 237 48 DLS to survive, but a source of inspiration. A reminder that you can reclaim freedom and happiness like the blazing sunlight after a Texas prairie storm, bringing hope for a fresh start. Start by sharing your story in the comments. Have you ever been financially controlled by family? What did you do to push through, to find freedom, like I did when I let go of revenge, built a chosen family with Sophie and Liam, and created a life I'm proud of in Austin? I want to hear your stories because everyone matters. Everyone can inspire. Just like I overcame my parents' rejection, graduated with honors, and landed a job at a small design firm on South Congress. Let's break the silence together. Let's build a community where we lift each other up, where freedom and happiness are valued. If this story hits you in the heart, if it sparks a bit of hope or makes you think about your own worth, hit that like button to let me know you felt it. And if you know someone in Texas, maybe in Austin, Dallas, or anywhere, who needs to hear this to find the strength to keep going, share this video with them so they know they're not alone, that they can find light after their darkest days like I did. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring Reddit drama stories. Stories that'll move you and fire you up to stand up for yourself. I can't wait to read your stories in the comments, and thank y'all in Texas for listening to my journey. From pain to freedom, from control to happiness, and from darkness to light. How do we keep this going with a new drama story that'll keep you glued to the screen? Coming up in the next video.